What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network, on Peacock, and on Vice. As today we're talking Season 3, Episode 9 of Dark Side of the Ring, The Double Life of Chris Kanyon. Obviously, last week's episode got a lot of attention, got a lot of buzz on the plane ride from hell. Quite the episode to bring the season back with. I urge you to check out my review of that episode from last week here on the channel. I do try to put up these reviews a couple days after the episodes are released on Vice. I know the Plane Ride from Hell episode was on their YouTube channel. I tried to watch this on Friday. I ended up watching it through Xfinity on Friday night because SmackDown wasn't airing in my fucking area because of the baseball game that was going on between the Sox and the Yankees. But nonetheless, I couldn't find it on YouTube. It might be up on their channel now. They might have put it up already. I don't know. I mean, the Plane Ride from Hell one, they put up pretty quickly on YouTube, so I'm not 100% sure. But either way, you can find them, for free on their website usually. Someone usually posted somewhere. So I urge you to check out the show. We are over 3 seasons into the show. And if you're not already following Dark Side of the Ring, watching the episodes, you're missing out. It's a great show. And even with the stuff either I'm already familiar with, like Plane Ride from Hell, it gives us more details, really is enlightening, and kind of showcases other people as morons for comments they've made, like Tommy Dreamer, which was dumb. Thankfully, he's since come out and apologized, which you kind of expected him to, but it is what it is. Or something like this, like Chris Kanyon, I know of, like I know who he is, but I really didn't know a lot about Chris Kanyon's life, and I knew he was an openly gay wrestler, or not initially, but he eventually came out as gay a long time, a while later after he already left WWE. That was pretty much all I knew about him. I remember Jericho and the Young Bucks doing a podcast about him for Talk is Jericho about a year ago, and it was really good, because the Bucks talked a lot about Kanyon in their book. Unless they did, I don't know if it was a whole podcast about Kanyon. It was probably just a lot of time spent on Kanyon, because they were very close with him, but at any rate, this was a great episode. Great episode in that it was very fucking depressing. Very informative. Got to know a lot about the guy. He seemed like a great dude, by most accounts anyway. And, did a lot of dark shit, unfortunately. Was just very troubled. And it's a very sad story. I hate to say great because it deals with very troubling, subject matter. But it was very informative and I enjoyed it. And these episodes are always very enlightening. So let's get right into it. They talk about everyone they interview. We hear from James Mitchell, who was really, really close with Chris Kanyon. Father James Mitchell, he's currently in the NWA. He's been in Impact before. He was on AEW doing the Penelope Ford Kip Sabian wedding earlier this year. I mean, anyone who has followed wrestling for any good stretch of time knows who Father James Mitchell is. So he was on this episode. He was really close with Kanyon. We hear from Raphael Moriarty, I believe is how you pronounce his name, if that's, if I got the name right there. He's currently an executive in AEW. I completely forgot if I even knew to begin with. He was in WWE a long time ago. But he also worked for Impact before going to AEW a few years ago, and I see his post all the time on Twitter and on LinkedIn and stuff like that, so I know who Mr. Moriarty is, again, if that's how you pronounce his last name. He was very much in this episode. He was very close with Kanyon, over the years as well. We hear from the Bucks, obviously, as I mentioned earlier. We hear from Brian Cage, who had a huge influence on Cage. Cage kind of trained under Kanyon coming up in the business. He was on Cage's show or his promotion or something towards the end of his life. Among other people. There were other people they interviewed for this thing too, but those were the main ones. Oh, DDP being another one, Diamond Dallas Page. A lot of people like that. Chris Jericho, which was weird, because Chris Jericho, as most of you know, for the last 2 seasons has done the narration for Dark Side of the Ring. So you hear Jericho do narration, and then we see Jericho, and he doesn't refer to him like, oh, I had some comments of myself, of my own, and then we hear from Jericho. It was a weird thing, but yeah, we hear from Jericho as well. So yeah, all of his friends and people that were close with him talk about him and how cool of a guy he was, and how he was behind the scenes, stuff like that. And Raphael, again, I believe if that's how you pronounce his name, talks about how Chris was never really comfortable sharing never really comfortable in general with his sexual orientation, because I guess he knew from when he was really, really young that he was gay. But he grew up very Catholic. He went to a chapel school or something like that, and he had issues there telling the priest of his temptations of being gay, blah, blah, blah. And they basically told him, you got to resist these temptations. Like, you can't do that. You can't sin, blah, blah, blah. Catholic stuff. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who watch this and don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but, that was pretty shitty right from the get-go. But I guess Chris even said at that point who he was as a kid, and he even was telling himself and telling these people as part of the chapel, even though they told him it was wrong to be gay, which I think a lot of us can agree is not okay, to believe that way, to think that way. But he even knew as a young kid, he was like, this is who I am. This is who I am. And I guess they wanted him to deny his sexual orientation. So he had issues with that from when he was really, really young, which is just terrible. So they kind of made him think a certain way to kind of hide it. And that's, him different than some people because he grew up very religious, and they tell you from a very young age that it's not okay to feel that way about certain people, which is just fucking, it is what it is, I guess. But anyway, so we hear from, but they talk about Fabulous Moolah, which I was not expecting to hear about in this episode, but it feels like we get a lot of, crossovers from these episodes, because they did an episode on Fabulous Moolah in Season 1. We also hear about Chris Benoit at WrestleMania 20, and they did a whole other episode on him as well, and Eddie Guerrero as part of the Benoit episode back in Season 2. So a lot of this stuff kind of overlaps with each other. But I guess he went to, her school, her wrestling school or something like that, and she was really impressed with him. That was what led him to WCW in the 90s, and when he first joined WCW, he was part of a tag team called Men at Work. And I guess his friends were saying that was when he was at his happiest, was when he first got to WCW. He was doing his thing, no one was giving him any shit. It was what it was. So we hear a lot, like I said, from Father James Mitchell, Sinister Minister. And I guess Kanyon called him up about moving to Memphis. He was moving to Memphis probably for a new, I don't know if he was moving just in general or if he was leaving WCW. I don't think so. And while he was moving, I guess, a bunch of gay porn fell out of his van. And he started freaking out and telling these people, oh, it's not mine. It must be that, James. I forgot what James Mitchell's name actually is. It's Von something because he's German or something. I'm just going to call him James Mitchell because that's how I know him and it's easier to follow. Oh, it must be his, he must be gay too, and blah, blah, blah. So he put it all on Mitchell, and Mitchell got the phone call from from Kanyon saying, hey, I'm sorry I put all the blame on you, but I just needed to hide the fact. I guess that was his way of coming out to Mitchell that he was gay. And that was kind of a bizarre way to come out to him, but, he needed someone to cover for him. He was like, okay, so that happened. While he was in WCW, he got repackaged as Mortis, I believe his name was, in 97. Obviously I never watched WCW growing up. I wasn't a fan at the time. I don't really know nothing about I really know nothing. I know nothing about this whatsoever. So this is my first time hearing about it. But I guess he got repackaged with the mask gimmick in 97. They praised and how cool it was. We then hear from Mitchell, and I guess they were in the car one day, and Kanyon just randomly went off on him. And then he fired him as his manager or something, because he managed them on TV, and that's how they got close in real life, was because he managed them on TV. And it was just weird. I went back and watched the clip again. I'm like, did he ever say why he flipped out on him? I know it became a trend that he would flip out on Mitchell, just randomly, because obviously later he got diagnosed as being bipolar. But it wasn't like there was something small that set him off, unless I missed something after watching it 2 or 3 times. I don't think they ever mentioned why he actually went off on him. It was pretty serious shit, too. I don't know if this was when he choked him or if he just fucking flipped out on him. I don't remember, but, there wasn't even a catalyst. And maybe that's just normal for bipolar stuff. I don't really know 100%, but I thought that was interesting. Obviously, it leads to more altercations between the two, specifically with Kanyon just randomly going off on him, so it wasn't the last time. But it was also around this period that he became paranoid with people finding out that he was gay. And, it was I don't want to say it was a terrible time back then, but for someone in his shoes, it wasn't exactly ideal to be coming out as gay, because back then in wrestling, gay people were portrayed as heels. That's just the way that it was. Not condoning it, it was pretty, just, in retrospect, it's pretty fucking dumb. They showed clips of Billy and Chuck weren't actually gay, but in storyline, they would be shown wearing thongs, because that was the funny thing, or Gold Dust, or, who's the other name? Adrian Adonis was another one. Just because you were gay, that automatically meant you were heel, which is fucking dumb. We hear from Brian Cage, and like I said, he was a trainee of Kanyon at one point. He talked about Kanyon and their relationship as a trainee and whatever. But Mitchell brings up how, I guess, so this was interesting. Kanyon had like a control center, so to speak, according to Mitchell, of like guys that he was talking to or potential boyfriends or actual boyfriends or whatever. And he kept the conversations that he had with these people and he printed them out and he put them in a box. And people would ask about the box, and he would fucking flip out when people asked about it because they didn't know what was in the fucking box. Like, Mitchell eventually called the box, he called it Pandora's box. And he said it was like the equivalent of like Nixon, like him keeping his Watergate tapes. Like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? Obviously, this isn't as serious, but he was wondering, like, why would you keep it in a box, especially if you know that people might ask about it or might get found out about, or like, are you hoping someone knocks it over and finds out that you've been having these conversations? Like, what are you doing? So they talk about the NWO and how his push ended when they came in, which they kind of go all over the place with the timeline on this episode because they talked about his mask gimmick a while earlier in the episode, and they said that it started in 97. NWO was already around in 96. They started up in 96. So why would they have started the gimmick during the NWO only for it to fail? Like, they made it sound like the NWO came around after he started doing the gimmick, which might be true. But then if that's true, the timestamp is wrong because they said that he started doing it in 97. I don't fucking know. The NWO stuff felt completely random. But that was around the time they were trying to send the message. That was when like the gimmicky wrestling shit was done. And that was done and over with. So it was time for him to start doing something more reality-based. Mitchell once again shares a story about Kanyon choking him out one night, and Kanyon immediately apologized and started crying and hugged him, and it was like, yo, what is going on here? So he eventually unmasked and then just became Kanyon, or Chris Kanyon, I think just Kanyon. And his career was kind of taking off. He helped out David Arquette and taught him how to wrestle in the Ready to Rumble movie. He was in the movie, and that was going well for him, and he was well known. He was having some success in WCW, and he was also known for putting on the best parties. So at one of his own parties, he was talking with some women. One of the women walked away and left and went over to Mitchell, knowing that they were close, and said, I think your friend might be gay. I don't know why Mitchell would tell Kanyon that, because he told him, hey, one of these women thinks that you're gay or suspects that you might be gay. You know that he's paranoid. Maybe he didn't really click for him at that point. I don't know. But it was just weird. Like, why would you tell him that, knowing that he's paranoid about people finding out that he's gay? At the very least, you don't say that. You might say, like, hey, if you really want to hide your identity more, you might just want to do a little less. I don't even know, like, show it less or something like that. But just to outright tell the guy that, hey, this woman thinks that you might be, whatever, that you might be gay. It's just weird. Like, obviously, it's not going to put him in the best mental space, so that was weird. So obviously, Kanyon, hearing that, gets even more paranoid, goes off on him. So I guess what happened was, he told James Mitchell, like, hey, later on in the night, we're going to film a fucking porno, I guess, basically. And I want you to film it, like, grab any whore, he said, grab any hooker or whatever, and we'll go film a sex scene, and we'll show it to the boys, and that'll prove to people that I'm not gay. And Mitchell's like, okay. So they agreed to do it. Mitchell grabbed some woman ready, she obviously knew what she was getting into. She, like, would wear his mask, like the Mortis mask or whatever, but Kanyon never showed up. So Mitchell's waiting there with this woman. He said he let nature take its course, he said. So they had sex. They filmed it. And then he was showing Kanyon the next day for whatever reason. I don't know why. I forgot what his exact reaction was. Kanyon went off on him. I don't think it was because of the video. He went off on him because Kanyon thought that Mitchell used his hair conditioner, and Mitchell barely has any hair at this point, so he's like, why are you accusing me of that? I didn't use your hair conditioner. What are you talking about? But he goes off on him, beats the shit out of him, throws him over the bed, and Mitchell, freaking out after having been fed up with this shit for so long, pulls a gun out on him because he had a gun under his pillow. He's like, you better back the fuck off, blah, 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 blah. And Canyon's like, you're not going to do it. Oh, yeah, whatever. He was like fucking yelling about it. So eventually he calmed down, but he even admitted here that he was prepared to shoot him. And he'd already looked at the laws about, hey, listen, if this guy really threatens my life because he was choking me out with his thumbs on my Adam's apple, I might just have to shoot him. So he was prepared to kill him. Or not maybe kill him, but prepared to shoot him at the very least. and he knew that he'd be protected by the law. That's how serious this got, because he knew that he was what he was getting into. It wasn't like a reckless thing, like, oh, I'm going to grab a gun and shoot this guy. And he wasn't bluffing either, like he would have actually shot him, he said, in his own words, allegedly. And, he'd already looked up the laws and everything before even doing that, because Kanyon was really being abusive towards him. So while he was in WCW, Kanyon got repackaged once again as Chris Champagne. But then WCW closed down. He went to WWE, had some success off the bat as tag team champion, U.S. champion. And it was weird. Like, they started talking about some behaviors that he was doing. Like, he would get notices from, like, the IRS, and he said that he was doing his taxes, when in reality he would just, like, spread out the papers and just stare at them. He would just look at them for a while instead of actually doing anything, which was weird. He would stay in bed for, like, 6 to 7 days in a row, never leave. Mitchell, not really knowing the signs of depression, he would say, oh, get the fuck up. What do you have to be depressed about? You're a big star. You're a champion, blah, blah, blah. He didn't get it, he admits. But he just thought it was bizarre at the time, and he would try to get him out of bed. So it was around this time that Kanyon injured his shoulder in WWE. And he didn't think he would come back from it. He took steroids to get better. Obviously, that didn't help with his depression. During which recovery, he got a bad blood infection. And he was worried that during this process, WWE was just going to release him. They didn't think he'd be worth it. He came back about a year later during a segment on SmackDown, like being unboxed or whatever. Like, he was in a giant box, Taker unwrapped the box, and it was Kanyon in there, and Taker beat the fuck out of him. This was like American Badass Ruthless Taker. We would beat the shit out of the guy. I wouldn't condone that exactly, but he was pretty stiff with his shots. And Kanyon, there's conflicting reports here. Jericho thinks there's no way that they didn't suspect that he was gay. Because why would they have him out there singing this song, having him act almost like he was gay on the show, and then have Taker beat the shit out of him? Like, why would they do that? And the Bucks were there. This was like at a California wrestling show, at a California WWE SmackDown taping. They watched in the crowd, and they couldn't understand why he was being buried either. Like, they couldn't understand, why would you bring this guy back and then bury him? It's like, that's the WWE fucking mantra. They do this all the time. They were doing it 20 years ago. They do it today. And if someone comes back after a year and they immediately get buried or embarrassed. Whether it was because they knew or suspected he was gay or not is the question. That is never answered. Raphael was like, oh, there's no way. There's no way. I refuse to believe they did it because I refuse to believe that they buried him on purpose. It was definitely just a coincidence, which I don't believe. And I'm thinking to myself, have you ever worked there, dude? Like, do you watch the shows? And I guess he did work there, so he would know. I still find that the fact that he would even say that, it's like, dude, you know what this company's capable. Like, if you watch the shows, even now they do this. They embarrass people all the fucking time because they're petty. I don't know if it was because they thought he was gay, though. That is where I'm like, okay, they might have just embarrassed him just to embarrass him. I don't know if it was because of that, though. Because he had yet to come out. Maybe they suspected something. I don't know. Even still, though, it was just, for them to even put them in that situation, though, for them to even put him in that situation a year coming back after being injured was just fucking weird. Like, that's WWE's fault. The intentions behind it, who knows? But I definitely think that was a dumb thing for them to do. Jericho thinks that really hurt him in his, mindset. And it wasn't a while afterward that he got fired because he was slotted in a certain position. He was being jobbed out to Funaki, of all people. And then he got let go in 2003. He told Mitchell that he thought that he got fired because they thought he was gay. And he didn't actually believe that, I guess, because he went back and forth about it. But I guess he only really used that as an excuse in case he wanted to sue WWE. And they talk about how he could be his own worst enemy. The Bucks talk about getting booked in the same show as him in 2005, and they got really close with him as a result of that. Cage also got to work with him at his own promotion, and he got really close with Kanyon during that point. And I guess they had a match on Cage's promotion at his show, and Cage didn't want to go over because he looked up to him, but Kanyon was like, no, you're going to go over, like, you're the new guy, blah, blah, blah. So he kind of forced himself to go over, forced Cage to go over, and Cage thought that was really cool. We hear from Luke Hawx as well. Who I know from NWA. He's made other appearances elsewhere, but I guess he knew Kanyon very well. He tells this story about Kanyon seeing aliens or something like that, and he was in like Scientology, and he wanted to break into a building. I didn't really follow that. I was kind of confused by that story. That kind of just felt like it was randomly thrown in there. I guess it was just kind of to use to show that he was just kind of losing his mind at that point. Maybe it was the drugs or the roids, or I don't remember. But I guess when he woke up, he remembered none of it. So that was kind of concerning to Luke. And it was around that time that he started on the bipolar disorder medication. It was also around that point that he came out to his friends as gay. And a lot of these people, like, he came out to Luke's as gay, and Luke was like, okay, whatever. And Kanyon was like, well, you don't hate me? He's like, why would I hate you? And then Canyon's like, because I'm gay. He's like, what? I don't give a shit. And even Cage, I guess, admitted, like, he admits, like, listen, I was a little bummed when I found out he was gay. But at the same, like, if you hear that, you're like, oh, shit, where is this going, you know? But Cage goes, listen, as soon as he said that, I was initially bummed. Then I'm like, why am I bummed? He's still the same person. Why should I care? And then he believes that was a turning point for him as a person, really made him mature and feel more understanding about how Kanyon feels and you know, his viewpoint on gay people. I don't think he was ever anti-gay, but he didn't understand why he was disappointed. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Like, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? So that really helped him become more understanding as a person, which I thought was cool. They talk about how, I guess, Kanyon wanted to be a role model in being an openly gay wrestler, and he came out publicly at an indie show in a match against DDP in 2006. The way that it was done was weird. I'm sure it was Canyon's idea, but DDP, like, cut a promo afterwards. He's like, oh, there's this rumor going around that you're gay. Can you confirm that or not? And then Kanyon was like, yes, I am. It's almost like a work. It's weird. So it was around that point that WWE had Orlando Jordan. He was in WWE already. They were ready to make him an openly gay wrestler. Now, this is where they lost me, because I knew Orlando Jordan was gay. Was he openly gay, though? Maybe he was behind the scenes. This is where I was confused, because I could have sworn that Darren Young, when he came out in, I think, 2013, that he was WWE's first openly gay wrestler. Not that he was WWE's first gay wrestler, obviously. Like, they've had Pat Patterson, Kanyon, other people. Jordan, obviously. I could have sworn, though, that Darren Young was their first openly gay wrestler. Maybe Jordan was out behind the scenes. I don't know if that became public knowledge until years later. That really confused me. But I guess he did write a letter to WWE. He was pissed at WWE that he felt they were stealing his gimmick. And then Mitchell told him, like, you can't have a patent on being gay, dude. Like, they just kind of beat you to the punch. And if you really wanted the attention around it, maybe you should have come out while you were with them, you know? Excuse me. So he wrote a whole letter to WWE talking about it. It was just bizarre. Stephanie wrote back, which was shocking enough. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your struggles. Like, oh, I'll clear this with legal. And you never heard back about it. But they talk about this, and this was in 05, 06, but then they go backward a bit to 04 to when he attempted to jump the ring at, WrestleMania 20 or something, or he tried to jump the ring. It was just weird. So, of course, WWE isn't going to listen to this guy after he tried to jump the ring and try to get, make headlines all the time, which is weird. So he got invited to the after party, even though he didn't work there anymore. He saw Vince, and he told Vince, hey, thanks for inviting me, even though you fired me. And I'm thinking, everyone was like, oh, that's just so cringy. Like, why would you do that? And they kind of said, like, he just did that to make headlines, blah, blah, blah. And then it gets really dark. So Matt Jackson, a 19-year-old at the time, taking a shower, gets a call from Kanyon, who says to Matt Jackson, I'm going to kill myself. I can't do this anymore. Matt Jackson, a 19-year-old, again, freaking the fuck out. And Kanyon told him to pray for him over the phone. Matt Jackson trying to talk him out of it. The shower is going on the entire time. They're both freaking out. Eventually, he talked him out of it. He got him to calm down. Matt Jackson hangs up the phone thinking, what the fuck is going on right now? Kanyon told him that he loved him. It was just bizarre. He started appearing as a regular on the Howard Stern show in 2006, and he had a regular gig as doing that stuff. And he was saying on there that WWE fired him because he was gay. Cena was on the show, did a guest spot on the show a little while later, and they brought this up to him. I guess, I don't think Kanyon was there in person for that show, but Cena said, I don't think he was fired because he was gay. I think he was fired. And he said he knew him for a long time. And Cena sounded genuine when he said this, too. I don't think Cena should be canceled or whatever the fuck people want to use, which is just stupid. The whole cancel shit is dumb. But Cena getting any flack for this, I mean, he just was stating his opinion. Ric Flair was more of an asshole about it, but, Cena was just being honest. He was like, I don't think he was fired for being gay. I think he was fired because he just wasn't very good. His opinion, whatever. Ric Flair was on the show soon after over the phone, and he got on. Kanyon was there for this one. He buried Kanyon over the phone. Kanyon was just sitting there taking it all in. Flair was like, "Oh, you were never good enough to be there in the first place. I don't think you would ever go back. You're just not good enough." Like, Flair was being a fucking asshole about it. And again, his opinion for thinking that Kanyon isn't very good, but it was just weird. It was just bizarre. Like, he was just saying, like, "Oh, you're just fucking terrible, blah, blah, blah." I need to watch the whole video. Maybe there's more to this, and maybe there's a reason why Flair's being more hostile than he probably should be. Maybe they cut out a part, because they made Kanyon look like the total victim here, which he probably was, but I'd have to go out and watch the video. Someone shared it, and I just forgot to watch it. But anyways, that really hurt him, because he looked up to Flair, and then he's sitting there telling him that he's terrible, so that's not exactly good. The last time James Mitchell remembers seeing him in person, Kanyon that is, was in 2007 at an indie show. Saw him in person have this horrible match, but they went out afterward to a bar, and the fans laughed at him at the show, unfortunately, but he had people laughing with him at the bar afterward, and he was making self-deprecating gay jokes and stuff like that, and someone came up to him all serious and said, "Listen, I'm a big fan of you because, I'm gay, and you really inspired me to come out, blah, blah, blah," and that was pretty cool. And then afterward, he talked to Mitchell, and he was like, "Yeah, my back hurts because I tried to jump in front of a car a couple days ago trying to kill myself." And then Mitchell's like, "Why the fuck are you doing that?" And they just went back and forth about it. Kanyon goes off on him again, tries to beat the shit out of him again. Just bizarre. And they make up by hugging. They're driving to the airport, and they're reminiscing. They're just in tears laughing about all this stuff that they've gone through and whatever. And as soon as Mitchell got on the plane and flew home, and he was crying the whole time and got home, he's like, "Honestly, I think that was the last time I saw him, because I think the next time he tries, he's actually going to do it." Like, he knew that was the last time he was ever going to see him. Because he got the sense that, yeah, he's definitely going to kill himself. Like, he was really sad just thinking about that. So Mitchell called him every day for 2 weeks, and he barely would pick up. And then finally, on April 2nd, 2010, Mitchell gets a call at 6 a.m. in the morning. Never a good time to get a phone call. And it's from one of Kanyon's friends or someone that he lived with or whatever, saying that he was found dead in his childhood home following an overdose on antidepressants. It was suicide. That's what it was. It was ruled a suicide. And they talk about, Jericho's like, "Oh, you would never hear a bad word about Mitchell," even though Cena and Flair publicly shit on the guy. But I guess as a person is what he means. Like, no one would ever say a bad word about him. He was a great dude. Mitchell said that, he was just a tortured soul, was Chris Kanyon, and he inspired a lot of people, including the Bucks and Cage, who are going at it today in AEW. And Kanyon told the Young Bucks one time, and the Young Bucks shared the story to end the episode about how, he said that Kanyon would do anything to be in their shoes. And he was like, "Why would you want to be in our shoes? Like, you've been successful, you've been in WCW, you've been in Nitro, WWE. Why would you want to be in our shoes?" And Kanyon was like, "The journey is better than the destination. Like, if you think you're going to be happy when you get to the destination, you better think twice. You feel no differently. So you better enjoy the journey while it lasts." And that was kind of the note that they ended on. So very depressing episode, obviously. Learned a lot about Chris Kanyon here. A lot that I didn't already know. Great stuff, though, as far as how it's covered. The only issue is, like, the timeline and how they kind of jump back and forth. It was very fucking confusing. The Orlando Jordan thing, they probably covered accurately, but again, maybe it's just me misremembering. I just didn't think he was openly gay while he was there. Maybe it's just because they didn't incorporate it into a gimmick. I don't know. I don't remember. That was confusing. But overall, it was a very good episode, though. I urge everyone to go out of their way to check it out. Dark Side of the Ring. The name of the episode was The Double Life of Chris Kanyon. Good stuff here. Depressing as all fuck, obviously. So I just know that going into it, it's not going to have a happy ending. Very sad. But as far as how it was covered, I thought they did a great job with it. And I don't think we've gotten many episodes yet about, like, gay wrestlers and them having to hide their identity. I don't think of all the episodes of Dark Side of the Ring they've really covered that yet. So I thought it was cool they got to talk about that here, and they, talked about a lot of things that not even wrestlers can pick out about it, but even just normal people who might be going through something similar. And I thought that was cool that Dark Side of the Ring put up a number for suicide prevention at the end of the episode. I wasn't expecting that, but I thought that was cool. And they did something similar at the end of the Grizzly Roberts or Grizzly Smith, the Jake Roberts family episode. They put up something similar at the end of that one about, like, family abuse or whatever, sexual abuse or whatever. But yeah, check this episode out when you get a chance. Season 3, Episode 9 of Dark Side of the Ring, The Double Life of Chris Kanyon. Thank you guys for checking out my review of the episode. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Be sure to hit the bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up. Like I said earlier, these reviews are usually up on Sundays, so stay tuned for that. More Dark Side of the Ring reviews coming in the weeks to come. Plenty of content coming in the weeks to come as far as more episodes and stuff like that. I know next week is Onita's FMW, the deathmatch promotion. So hopefully that is not as depressing. I don't think it will be. It'll be interesting. I don't give a fuck about the deathmatch shit. We already kind of got that with the Nick Gage shit. But whatever. I'm interested to see how they cover it. Getting Terry Funk on the show, never a bad thing. Mick Foley on the show, never a bad thing. So I look forward to that. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll catch your ass down the road.